Brothers and sisters, this Ash Wednesday, the Lord invites us through the readings to enter fully into this time of grace that is Lent. The word Lent itself means springtime, and it's oftentimes, for us as Catholics, a time of renewal, a time of growth in the spiritual life. And we are invited through not only the readings, but in the tradition of our living out our faith, that is, how we have been taught to live out our faith, to enter in fully in three different ways in which we are called to give up certain things in order to make room for God. And that's in fasting, almsgiving, and prayer. Now it's interesting. Fasting, we know it means that we're giving up food. Today being a day of fast. The other fast day is Good Friday. But also on the Fridays of Lent, we're reminded that we are called to abstain from meat. And then, of course, there is whatever other little ways of sacrifice, whether it's giving up chocolate or sweets or whatever it is that the Lord has inspired each one of us to do. These are ways in which we say that though food is good, we're going to recognize that there is something even more good that we are making room for, and that is God. Because man does not live on bread alone, but on every word that comes from the mouth of God. That we live not so much from our physical sustenance, but rather from the bread of life, the Eucharist, the source of all blessing. Almsgiving. We remember that there are others who are less fortunate than us. In all honesty, we are one of the richest countries in the world. Even our poor people are richer than some poor people in the rest of the world. So that in giving alms, we make a sacrifice. We recognize that maybe there are things that are a little superfluous in our own daily lives. Like, do we really need the Starbucks coffee? Do we really need the latest cell phone? Do we really need certain things? And so we are called to sacrifice some of our money on top of what we as Catholics already are called to do in terms of supporting the church, the needs of the church. We are called to make these sacrifices. And sometimes people will take the money that they save from food that they're not buying, food that they're giving up, and give that to the poor as a sign of union. The third thing might not seem like so much of a sacrifice, but it is in terms of time, our attention, prayer. Prayer means that we are looking and placing our attention on God, that we are reuniting ourselves, which is really what the word religion means. It means to unite again, or to tie or bind together once again. Religion. This is the proper meaning of the term. That we are called to set aside some time to come into contact with God. And sometimes some of us may not know how to do that. I recommend that it start, if we're not already doing some prayer, if we're looking for ideas, I recommend that we can start even just with pausing for 1 minute 2 times a day. Just simply to say, God, I know you are with me. I am aware of your presence. And then, of course, after a couple weeks, we could go to 3 minutes. And then after a couple weeks of doing that, 5 minutes. And if we're adventurous enough, maybe we could give up a TV show and sit together with the rest of our family members, if we have them, and pray the rosary together, which only takes 20 minutes. Jesus, however, is reminding us not just that we are called to do these things, fasting, almsgiving, and prayer, but he reminds us that we're to do them in a particular way. That we are not to, do whatever it is that we're doing and take pictures of it, post it on social media, say, look how good I am. Right? That's hypocrisy, because we're not looking to say how good we are. We are looking to basically live out our relationship with God that says, God is so important to us, we're going to make time and space for God. And recognizing that we need that. It's not because we're so good, and I'm not going to sit here and say we're so evil either, but rather without God, without His grace, without His gifts, without His blessings, we know where we end up. That none of us on our own is worthy of heaven, that God gives us this as a gift, not because of what we do, but because of our putting our trust in him and not in ourselves. So when we are doing these things, if we are doing them to boost ourselves in a particular way so that other people might think well of us, well, Jesus is saying, well, you get your reward, meaning God doesn't look favorably upon those kinds of fasting, those kinds of almsgiving, or that kind of prayer, the kind that's looking to be basically showy, ostentatious. Which is kind of funny because today, what are we doing? We're going to smear some ashes on our forehead to let everybody else know what we're about today. That's a bit of a challenge, I think. As a priest, I often think of this gospel as a challenge to me too. How am I called to still live a humility of my life? I thought one time that it might be a good idea to do what they do in Europe and sprinkle ashes on people's heads instead of doing the smudge on the forehead. But at the same time, I recognize there is a value to witnessing to the faith, so long as we recognize that we're not the best, we're not the greatest in terms of being Catholics. In fact, today, even just associating with being Catholic, some people will put us down and make fun of us. And so even that, just taking that with humility, can be another way that we are offering a sacrifice to God. So today we ask the Lord to inspire us even more, if he hasn't already, in terms of how he is calling us to fasting, to almsgiving, and to prayer. And we ask for the grace to do all of those things with humility, knowing that we are God's beloved children, and that because of his goodness to us, his mercy toward us, we are invited into this relationship and invited to deepen it today.